Hello everyone, welcome to the Main Data Perspective channel. Today we'll be learning on how to work with numeric data in Python. So kindly subscribe to my channel and like our videos if you find any of them educative. Without wasting time, let's dive right in.
In this video, we'll be learning on how to work with numeric data in Python. The two numeric data type in Python is integer and float, and the difference between both is that integer is a whole number while float is a decimal. So, for example, let's set a variable called value, and let's set our value variable to be equals to the number 5. If we go ahead and use the type function, which we talked about in our last class, to check the type of our value variable, you could see that we get a class of integer. Okay, so if we repeat same process and let's take a decimal value instead of, so let's take 5.3 this time around, and let's use our type function also to print the type of our value. So you see we've got a float. So we have integer and float as both our numeric data type in Python, and difference is integer is a whole, and the difference is integer is represent an whole number, while floats usually represents decimal numbers. Next, we'll be looking at some basic arithmetic and comparison operators used with numeric data. Some arithmetic operators we have include addition, subtraction, multiplications, division, floor division, exponent, and modulus. So we'll be looking at each one of them separately. So first of all, let's look at our addition. So let me comment this. So for integers, we can add two numeric values together. So we can say let's create two variables and let's call this num1. Let's give our num1 to take the value of 5, and let's call our num2 to take the value of 7. Okay, so we can go ahead and add both variables together, and let's say num1 plus our num2. So can go ahead and print our num1 and num2, and you can see we got the value of 12 as our answer. And if you add 7 plus 5, it gives us 12. Another thing we can do is also subtraction, just the same way as our addition. So we can also decide to subtract let me make a correction here. We can also decide to subtract one value from another value. So we can go ahead and say we want to call print num2 and subtract it from our num1. So if we go ahead and run this, so you see we got 2. So 7 minus 5 gives us 2. And also we can also check for multiplication, work same process. We can also go ahead and multiply both variables together, num1 multiplied by our num2. So you can see we got 35 as our new answer. Okay, so for Python, to check for exponents, we make use of the multiplication sign twice. Okay, so if we want to check our num1 raised to the power of our num2, we just have to repeat our multiplication sign twice. Okay, and if we go ahead and run that, you can see we got 78,125. Okay, so other arithmetic operators will be looking at division, floor division, and the modulus, and these three arithmetic operators work differently in Python. So let's look at them. So firstly, let's look at our division, and so let's scroll this down so that we can have a better view, and let's go ahead and divide our num2 by our num1. So we use this sign for dividing values or for division in Python. Okay, and if we go ahead and run this, so take notes, we got 1.4. so it gives us both the whole number and the remainder value after the division takes place, right? So let's go ahead and check our floor division, and let's see what we get. Let's see the difference between our floor division, our division. So we're going ahead and we're printing our num2, and this time to carry out our floor division, we'll be using same division sign, but we'll be repeating it twice. Okay, so this is the sign for num division, to carry out your num division, your floor division, sorry. So if we go ahead and run this, you see we got 1. So using the floor division, it's just going to return only the whole number without the remaining values. Okay, so next we'll be looking at modulus, and let's see how the modulus operator work in Python. So we can go ahead and run this and print our num2 modulus. Our modulus sign is our percent sign. So if you print num2 modulus num1, it's going to return the value of 2, because 5 goes into 7 once, and it gives you the remainder of 2. Okay, so we'll get 2 as our answer here. Next, we'll be looking at some functions that can be used on integers or floats. For example, we have the round function. The round function is used to round our value to the nearest integer values. So if we have a decimal value or a float value, let's call our value and let's equate it to 7.5, right, or 7.56. okay, we can go ahead and call the round function on our value to round our value to its nearest integer or nearest whole number. So if I call this, we get 8, because 6 will be rounded to 5, and this will give us 6, and 6 will also be rounded, and which would take the digit of 1 plus 7, which will give us 8. For the round function, You can also add a second argument in the round function that tells us how many digits we want to round our float to. So for example, I can say I want to print and call our round function on our values, but this time around we want to add an additional argument stating that I want to round this my initial value just to a decimal place, so I want it to be 7 points a number. Okay, so if I go ahead and run this, we got 7.6 because 6 will be rounded and this will become 6 because any value above 5 when it's rounded would be 1, right, and added to the next value or to the previous value. So we have our 7.6. Another function we can look at is our absolute function or the abs function. The abs function can also be called on a negative figure to return the positive value of it. So we have the abs function, and we can say if we have a negative value that is equals to, let's say, -3, we can say abs, let me bring this down for a clearer view, abs, and call it on our value, and let's go ahead and print this out. So let's call our print function on this. So if we run this, we have 3. So you can see our negative value, which was -3, has been converted to a positive value of 3. So next we'll be looking at comparison operators. They are used to check if two numeric values are equal. For example, we have the lesser than, the equals to, the greater than or equals to, etc. Comparison between numeric values return a boolean that is either true or false. So when you compare two values to check if they're equals to each other, your reply could either be true, that is these two values are equal to each other, or false, that is they are not. For example, let's create two variables and let's call this our value 1, or let's use our value 1 since we'll be using num. So let's equate our value 1 to 4 and our value 2 to be equated to 6. So we can go ahead and check if these two integer values we've created are equals to each other. So to check for equals to, we use the equals to sign. Okay, so we can check if our value 1 equals, so the equals sign is repeated twice because if you can take note, when we want to assign a value to a variable, we use this equal sign. So if we are using it once, it means we are assigning that value. But to check for equality between two integers or between two variables, you use the sign, the equals to sign is used, but it's repeated twice. Okay, so we can check if our value 1 equals to our value 2. Okay, and let's print that information out, and if we go ahead and run this, we'll get a false because 4 does not equals to 6, rather 6 is greater than 4 or 4 is less than 6. So another thing we can also check using the greater than sign to check if a value is greater than or lesser than another value. So to check for greater than, we'll be doing using same process, but this time around we'll be using the greater than sign. So we can check if our value 1 is greater than our value 2, and let's go ahead and print this information, and you can see we got false also because 4 is not greater than 6, right? And if we go ahead and check if our value 1 is less than our value 2, we will definitely get a true because 4 is less than 6. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. So we got a true. Another thing we can check, we can also check for less than or equals to, greater than or equals to. So to check for greater than or equals to, okay, same process. Let's get our values. So we want to check if our value 1 is greater than or equals to, so you add the equals to sign attached to your greater than sign, right? Then you place in your other value which you want to check. So you can see our value 1, we'll check if it's greater than or equals to our value 2, and it returned false because 4 is neither greater than 6 nor is 4 equals to 6. So same process is done where you want to check for less than or equals to. Okay, so to check for lesser than or equals to, print our value 1 and check if it's lesser than or equals to our value 2. So if we go ahead and run this, we'll see we got true because one condition is met. Our value 1 is lesser than our value 2, although it's not equals to, but remember it's an or condition, lesser than or equals to, so one of the condition just has to be met, which one was actually met, so it returned true for us. We also have a sign for to check for inequality, so we can also check if two values are not equal to each other. So to check for inequality or not equals to, we can say print our value 1 and use the exclamation sign and the equals to sign together. Check if they are not equals to, so you can see the sign which is being used for not equals to. Okay, so we can go ahead and run this and we got true because 4 does not equals to 6. Lastly, we'll be looking at how to cast a string data type as an integer data type. For example, there are situations where you might import a CSV file or an Excel file or a text file into your system, and you recognize that the integer values or the float values in that files have been saved as strings, and you would have to convert those values to integers or float. So for example, let's say we have a variable called num1 and this our value has been saved as a string. So okay, so let's create another variable num2 and this would be, let's call this 70. So these two variables which we've created, they are actually strings. Okay, they are holding string values. So if we go ahead and add these two variables together, both values will be concatenated instead of them being added. Okay, so if I go ahead and I say I want to print num1 plus num2, it's going to give me 100 then 70. Okay, so it's actually acting as a string because it's actually a string, right? But we want to add these values together, so we have to convert these string values to numerical values to take the data type of an integer in Python. So to do this, we can call the int function on both our variables. So we can say int num1 plus int of num2. So calling int on our variable helps to convert it to that data type which we want. You remember int is a data type that represents integer. So if we go ahead and print this, we are going to get a value of 170 because we have converted this string or this variable, which was initially a string, to an integer value by using the int function. Okay, so that's all we'll be looking at for today. So this brings us to the end of our class. See you in our next class. We'll be talking about lists, tuples, and sets. Okay, so remember to like, subscribe to my YouTube channel to follow up on more videos, because I'll be creating more videos on our Python tutorial playlist. So remember to subscribe and like our videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.